Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Sam here, and today I want to talk to you about a very unique book that's also been made into a movie, and you might have seen it. It's called Fight Club. And this book is really unique in the sense that, you know, a lot of books you read and you come away thinking, oh, well, that's a cool story. You know, the character went through this kind of character arc, he or she somehow developed him or herself throughout the story, and it kind of ends at that, right? And you think, oh, I got some kind of entertainment value from the story, you walk out of the movie theater or put down the book and that's that. But this book here, Fight Club, I mean, I don't know how anyone could watch the movie or read this book and just have an isolated kind of experience where, you know, they don't somehow relate themselves to the character in the book and ask themselves some real visceral questions. And, you know, the reader themselves go through a transformation, or at least a shift in paradigm or perspective from having read the book or having seen the movie. You know, it's not just about the people on the screen transforming. It's a story that really forces you to transform as well, and kind of leaves you with no choice but to transform, because, like I said, every single page that you read is like a punch in the face, and you can't not change from having read this book if you read it properly, you know. And my point is not to give you spoilers here, so if you haven't seen the movie, please do. Also read the book. The book it's quite short. It's an easy read. It's very punchy. It's written in a very interesting format. It jumps from scene to scene, but in a way that, you know, still keeps its fluidity. On the back here, it describes one guy from the big issue describes it as wonderfully unpleasant. There's also, it says short, sharp, and savage. So this book, just to give you a gist, is about this guy that is living a very normal life that a lot of us can relate to. And then, you know, like a lot of movies, his world transforms. He's thrown into the extraordinary world from the ordinary world when he meets this guy called Tyler Durden. And Tyler Durden is this person that has a very radical philosophical constitution, very different from the original main character. And through meeting this person, he encounters all kinds of different themes, like violence. You know, he's exposed to violence. He's asked to kind of re-examine his own position as an individual within society. He's asked to question his relationship between the things that he owns, his own possessions. He's asked to question, you know, fundamental values that him, the main character, and ourselves kind of hold as a given. You know, in a civilized society, these are things that we all kind of hold as, take as a given, right? We don't really question them. But in the book, Tyler forces this person to question these things. And as a result, we're kind of forced to question it as well. And in the story, you know, Tyler and this, you know, new character, they somehow end up, you know, creating an underground fight club. And, you know, it's just this, you know, unorthodox thing where a lot of guys just come together and start beating each other up, you know, and then it spreads and a lot of people start to join. You know, everyday people like pilots and workers and mechanics, they all get into the fight club, you know, a bunch of guys beating each other up in an underground setting. And then they start to recognize each other when they see themselves in civilized society as well. So, you know, I don't want to give away too much, but it kind of starts there, and the story itself is very captivating as well. So, you know, even just for the entertainment value, it goes much deeper than that. But if you want to just watch it for that, it's well worthwhile as well. But what I wanted to do today was to get into some of the quotes that are from this book. It's been a couple months that I actually read this book, but I printed out some quotes, and I remember there being some really visceral quotes from this book. And I haven't actually even gone through all of these, but, you know, I just want to kind of go through them, pick out some, and then, you know, go through like how it relates to, some of the topics that I was talking about, like individual versus society, violence, and and death especially is a big theme in this movie and book. So one of the quotes that I see here is, it says, "I don't want to die without any scars. I don't want to die without any scars." And this quote I can definitely relate to, right? Because I remember when I was a teenager, I used to skateboard, and when I was, I was on the soccer team as well. And when I was in university, I was on the rugby team, and I did boxing for a while as well. So growing up, I've always been exposed to kind of little injuries. I've never had any major injuries, but I've always been exposed to having scratches, injuries, bruises all around my body and things like that, and that used to be normal for me. But what happened was, after I finished my master's degree and I got a job in Hong Kong working in Central, for about a year I didn't have any contact sports. I didn't have a single scratch on my body, and I didn't have a single bruise on my body, and it felt so weird to be so safe. I think that it was. And I remember the day that it hit me. I was like, wow, like I don't have anything, I don't have any injuries, and I don't have anything. I just realized that one day when I was working, and I was like, man, this is not right. It just didn't feel right, and this quote, "I don't want to die without any scars." I mean, you can take it metaphorically, or you can take it, literally. Like, when you die, you should have some scars on your body. I know that people don't want scars, but you should have some, like if you really live life and you do things that you should do in life, and you do take some physical risks as well, like whether it's in sports or whether you're doing something, a little bit risky. I mean, don't be stupid, but, live life, and life involves risks and contact, so I remember thinking that, and then that's part of what got me into looking into martial arts. And then that's part of what got me into doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I remember I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when I was, working. And that's precisely the reason why I started, is because I felt like it wasn't right that I didn't have any scars. Okay. Now, another one that, hits you in the face is, it says, "This is your life and it's ending one moment at a time." This is your life and it's ending one moment at a time. And that's something that's like quite obvious, right? Like, you think, yeah, of course it's ending one moment at a time, but like, do you really realize it? I mean, I'm pretty sure this quote is from Tyler, but it doesn't really say. But it's like, I read an article in a book, and it said that however old you are, you're that many years dead. And that's a crazy thing to think about. So I'm 29 years old, and that means that I'm 29 years dead. Those years are behind me already. They're gone. That time is behind me already. Like, I can't change it. It's irrevocable. It's just like, my past has already died. And however much future I have in front of me is unclear. And I'm approaching the end one moment at a time. And if you really think about it, that's a really visceral thing, right? Like, even sitting here, just thinking about that concept is kind of scary, but it's not something that we can run from. And it's like, when you really lean into that and think about it, it's pretty crazy. And to think, to tie it into the previous quote, if you're going to die, why would you try to be so safe? Why would you take zero risks in anything that you do? Why would you live such a safe life? Because the ultimate end, the ultimate result is a given. It's already built into the equation. We're all gonna die. That's the ultimate result, right? Like, any risk that you take, financial, health-wise, or relationship, whatever, is a risk. It's a risk towards dying, right? Like, you don't want to die. That's the risk that you're taking, whatever it is that you do, right? And if a death is a given, then why would you try to be so safe, if that, especially if that means having to give up living a full life, right? I think that's something that we can at least all consider and, you know, really contemplate time to time, because well, I know that for myself, I don't think about it enough, and maybe I should. I know that the Stoic philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, they talk about this a lot. They talk about death meditation and, you know, contemplating death, and how that puts a lot of things into perspective. And in a way, I think, you know, Tyler Durden from this book is a Stoic. You know, he has that kind of Stoic perspective on a lot of different things. Let's see. It says, the things you used to own, now they own you. The things you used to own, now they own you. You know, and this is true, I think, when it comes to, you know, physical possessions and being tied down. Like, once you start to accumulate things, you begin to attach your ego to it, right? Like, if for example, I don't have a sports car, but if I was someone that had a sports car, my ego would automatically get attached to being that guy that has a sports car, right? And if one day, you know, I lose my company or whatever, and I have to give up that sports car, it'll be like I'm giving up a part of myself, and my ego will really fight back at having to give up that sports car, because I think, well, you know, I'm a lesser version of who I used to be if I don't have this sports car anymore. You know, I think that's what he means by, you know, the things that you own, they start to own you. You know, it's in a real way, like, the more things you have, the more they kind of have a toll on you know, holding you to the habits or to whatever it is that you did to acquire those things, you know. And if you get trapped in that, I think it's really hard to get out. And I think the only answer to that, not to get too woo-woo, is, again, tying it back to the previous quote. I think Tyler, you know, really kind of gets it. He's a guy that really gets it. Is, you know, you're going to die, right? Your life is ending one moment at a time. So why would you be so attached to the things that you own, right? It's like becoming detached from material things is kind of, it makes sense. You know, becoming detached from being so safe also makes sense when you consider the ultimate outcome of, you know, of death. And it's like, if you're so attached to material things, it's like you're denying that you're going to die, right? Like, is it really that important that you have those things? And I know that I'm not trying to be preachy. I know that I'm completely 100%, you know, what would you say, a perpetrator of this. I'm victim to this as well. Of course, I'm attached to material things. I have certain creature comforts that I kind of rely on, maybe a little more than I should. And, you know, it's not easy to give up, but, you know, at least reading a book like this, like Fight Club, or at least watching a movie like Fight Club, at least you kind of stop and examine it for a while, you know, and just asking these questions, you know, like I said, kind of forces you to transform in a small way. You know, maybe you're not gonna put down the book after reading it and just completely change your life, but, you know, at least you've asked some real questions, had a real conversation with yourself about these kind of topics. And I think that's quite important. You know, I think that's, you know, if you never go below the surface in life, in reality, you can live your whole life and just realize that it's been kind of superficial, and, you know, that's kind of a sad thing, right? Right. Here's another one. It says, if I could wake up in a different place at a different time, could I wake up as a different person? You know, this question is also pretty deep, and I don't know if I can actually tackle it. You know, it touches on the concept of identity, right? If I could wake up in a different place at a different time, could I wake up as a different person, right? And a lot of movies already kind of touch on this, right? Like there's movies about, you know, someone that wants to radically change their life and they move to a different place, you know, they find a different group of people to hang out with, and they start to behave in a different way. Like a lot of it is like, for example, going to college, right? You were like Superbad, for example, even touches on this. You know, who's the skinny guy? Not, what's his name? Michael Cera, whoever his character's name was. He wanted to kind of, he was best friends with, what's his name? The chubbier one. Anyway, he was best friends with him. And then, you know, he kind of wanted to go to a better school and escape that. But then, you know, his old life, kind of his old identity kind of catches up to him. And, you know, this idea of like identity is really interesting. It's like the character, the main character in this book, Fight Club, is also is confronted with this question of identity, right? Like you build your life around, you know, your things, you build your ego around these things. And then can you kind of change that overnight? Can you do it? You know, like who are you really, right? Like what is your identity? And it's like if you start to behave in a different way and you start to talk in a different way, like can you just become a different person overnight? You know, like you're changing all the time anyway, right? Like you're never the same person from one year to the next. You're changing. Like change is a gradual thing. But then if you wake up one time on one day at a different place at a different time, and you decide to kind of accelerate that change, and you decide to kind of become whoever it is that you decided to become, does that still count? And you know, I think it does. You know, personally, I think that it's one of the most liberating things. Like I think everyone should have the liberty and the freedom to choose to become whoever, you know, it is that they want to be. And it's better if they become that person by design, you know, instead of like just becoming a product of your circumstance and your situations. If you say, look, I want to become this kind of person and actively become that person, well, I think that's a noble thing, you know, and it's not an easy thing though. It's really, really not an easy thing because firstly, you have your old habits, and habits don't break very easily. You know, having a radical change in your environment helps, but even then, you know, some things are just neurochemically built into your brain over, you know, however many decades you've been alive. So you can't just change overnight. And also, there is social pressure. You know, like if you start to change, if you make a decision to change and become a different person, you know, your old life kind of catches up to you. Like I was saying with Superbad, you know, like your old friends and your family, you start to say like, look, man, like why are you acting so differently? Like why are you know, it makes them uncomfortable, and they try to put you back in a place where they feel comfortable and they feel like they know you, right? Because if you start to behave differently, they don't know you, and they don't. But you know, that should be fine, right? And that should be encouraged, in my opinion. And as long as you're changing in a different way, you know, like if you watch movies like Taxi Driver with Robert De Niro, you know, he kind of becomes a different person by design, but in a really horrible kind of way, you know. So there's different circumstances, but you know, I think if you want to change, you can change and you should change. Let's do one more. I don't want to make this video too long. Let's see. Okay, this one is is pretty powerful as well. It says, "It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything." And I think this is like, again, all these quotes are tied into each other, right? Like there's a central note here, and I don't know exactly how to articulate it, but all of these quotes and themes revolve around a central theme. And this one is definitely connected to, like death and the possessions and your ego, your identity. All these things are connected to this quote, and it kind of ties it in together as well. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. And I got it. The central theme that all these things revolve around is freedom. Is freedom. Like how do we become free from ourselves? From our possessions, from fear, taking risks. Like, how do we become a free person? And I think that's the central theme here in this book. And I didn't even realize that until I started talking about it. So it's like, if you lose everything, you're free to do anything. I guess that's true. If you lose your attachment to your ego, and you lose your attachment to the fact that you're not going to get out of this alive, then yeah, you are free to do anything, because just acknowledging that kind of eradicates a lot of the fear that you might have around losing things, because fear comes from being attached to a certain outcome, right? So if you do lose everything, you're kind of free to do anything. Like, a simple example would be a homeless person, right? Like, that person has basically lost everything. And if you look at a lot of homeless people, they're kind of out there, they seem kind of insane, but are they really insane? If you think about it, are these homeless people insane? Like, some of them might be, like, they might be actually mentally insane, but some of them are maybe just free. Like, for example, if you see a homeless person talking to themselves, mumbling, kind of shouting on the streets, like just running around, you think, oh, that person's insane. But actually, he might not be insane. Like, because when we're all alone in your home, or when I'm alone, I don't know about you, but I get kind of weird. I talk to myself all the time. I do weird things that I don't do in public, because in that situation, I feel free. I feel like I'm not being judged by anything. I feel like there's nothing to lose, by behaving a certain way. So when I'm alone, I talk to myself. Maybe I kind of act like an insane person or a homeless person, So maybe this person is just like that. He just doesn't fear judgment of others anymore, because he's got nothing to lose. He's lost everything. And if you put him back into, if you give him some money, clean him up, give him a job, put him back into civilized society, then he's got something to lose, and he doesn't want to lose his job, his new home, and he'll not do those things anymore, like scream and be free and like shout at people and just behave however he wants to behave. He won't do those things anymore, because he'll have something to lose, and that having something to lose kind of constricts him and makes him more unfree, like makes him unfree. So it's kind of a paradox, right? Like, if you don't want to not have anything. I'm not saying that the answer to having freedom is everyone should just be homeless. That's obviously not the answer. And the answer is not that everyone should completely be detached to material things and just forego everything. That sometimes that's the kind of Buddhist maxim. But, I don't think that's the answer either. Like, I think if you're in this world, you should be in this world. You should live in this world. You should have material things. You should have, certain things that you care about. And that's not a bad thing. But I think that the core concept here is that even though you have those things, and it's like the core concept is at least to be aware of it, at least to examine it, and at least to be cognizant of the fact that all these different dynamics exist, and there's different layers to reality. It's not all surface level. Like, it's fine to live on the surface level most of the time, but sometimes by reading books like these, or by watching movies like these, or reading other books, reading Stoic philosophy, sometimes you should plunge into the depth and kind of see what's down there, at least, and then you can come back up if you want to. You probably don't want to live down there, you leave that to the Buddhists and the philosophers. But as a person that's living in this world, you should at least know what's down there, you know? And I think, you know, reading a book like this and really thinking about it will give you some insight into the deeper layers of some of these concepts. So again, I don't want to make this too long, but if you watched this far, thank you for watching. I would really like to get your feedback on some of my thoughts. I would really appreciate that. Please hit subscribe if you haven't, and you know, feel free to share this video on social media, wherever. And you know, if you have any ideas for other videos as well, I always welcome kind of feedback and suggestions. So again, if you haven't, read this book, you know, Fight Club. If you've only seen the movie, you know, read the book. I think it offers a different perspective, and it's really valuable. I have this copy here, so if you want to borrow it, just let me know as well. And you know, I'm happy to kind of lend it to you. So anyway, thanks again for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.